I want to tell you a story, one that I haven't told yet. And it ties into what I just spent the last 2 days doing. Actually, it has more to do with the people that I did it with this weekend than what we actually did. And so this weekend was incredible. It was incredibly difficult. It was very tiring. But it was absolutely astounding what we accomplished together as a team. On Friday, we presented Ricky Skaggs. He's a 15-time Grammy-winning bluegrass artist. He is the most genuinely kind person I've met in a long time. And he and I made an instant connection. And by the end of the night, we were good friends, like we had known each other forever. And that, to me, that's the stuff I'm looking for in life, right? I don't know about you, but I like to cut through all the bull. And you can't do it with everyone. Not everyone allows that. Many people have barriers. I don't. So I can tell, I can point out the people or at least figure out who else out there has the same sort of vibe going. And this guy totally did. So anyway, I wasn't expecting this. I didn't even know who he was like 2 months ago. And so the show was built. It was booked. Yes, that's the easy part. And then the show had to be built. The venue had to be built. Because we do not have venues that can seat over 800 people. And this sort of artist needed to have a venue that could seat well over 800 people. And so our team had to build a stage and build the house. And so we did that. We did that in a gym. And the transformation was astounding. And the show was so well received. And I'm sure it was life changing for many people who have followed his career over the years. And then got to see him perform in Lyndonville, Vermont. I mean, just that. I mean, that's the fact that we're able to do that. The fact that we even think about doing that is amazing. And this has been going on for years. You know, this was happening before me, and it'll continue to happen. I'm just lucky enough to be part of the team. And so okay. So here's what I wanted to get. This is what I wanted to get to. You know, it's not just documenting the weekend or, you know, the concert with Ricky Skaggs and how amazing it was to meet him and to have such a connection with him and, you know, the experience in itself. And he met my children and my children got to meet him and he embraced them right away and without hesitation. Those details and those things I'll never forget, and I hope the kids never forget it. But the team that pulled this off, they are my family. And it reminds me how lucky I am to be where I am today. And not only did I get to spend so much time with such a talented person who is beloved by so many worldwide, I also got a phone call yesterday while I was preparing for another show from Natalie MacMaster, who has chosen me to help her on her tour. And so thinking about that now, or actually thinking back to a year ago, a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. But at least a year ago, this was not part of my future think. Never in a million years would I have thought that I would have been considered of value. First of all, by anyone. Second, by people who, I don't even know how to explain it. Because I don't want to insult them. We put stars up on pedestals, right? They just want to be down with the rest of the people in terms of like humanity, right? And I've always known that. And I know that. And that's why when I look at Ricky from across the room and we make eye contact and I just hint with my eyes toward my children, he knew exactly what to do next. It didn't even take actual words. And so when we put people up on pedestals, it takes away from them their humanity that they have and that they probably try to, communicate that all the time. And I watched fans of Ricky last night. Some had, differing levels of the inability to speak around him. And I get it. And anyway, this team of mine, the majority of them, it was 2 years ago this month, November, that I was living in my house. It was an actual house. It wasn't an apartment. My home. I was living there with my 3 children. The relationship I was in had dissolved, and I had asked my partner to leave. It was no longer a good, safe situation. And so he had left in April. And so I was in the house with the kids. And the house was built in a way, the landscape around it just caused water to just pour into the basement. And so the house was collecting water for many years. And there were, many preventative measures taken outside of the house to stop this. But it, us against water, good luck. And so the house was kind of falling apart and it was growing mold. It had something, it was in June or July where we had a really big rainstorm and water got in to the wall and it went through the ceiling, followed the track of the electrical to a ceiling light, and water started dripping out of the light. And so in that room, black mold, or whatever mold, I don't know if black mold or not, but mold had grown across the ceiling, across that whole track, or the whole track that the water took from where it entered the wall and where it flowed above the ceiling and down into the light fixture. And so that was all mold. And it was all mold in the wall, and the wall had cracked and had pushed forward because the water was coming down off the hill to the back of the house, and it was just pushing the house. So there was a crack in the wall and the mold in the ceiling and the mold in the crack in the wall and the mold in the ceiling and the mold in the wall. And you could smell it. You could smell it to the whole house. And so I was living there with the kids for all summer into the fall, and we couldn't use that living room anymore. That was full of mold. So I couldn't use the wood stove that was down there. And so I moved all of us up to another room, and we used that as our living room. But there was no heat up there. The heat had broken, the pipe had broken, and it was not fixed. And so as we moved into September, October, November, it was freezing cold. And so the kids and I were up in that room as our living room. And I was sort of new to the job that I had. But the people I worked with, they knew me for a full year. And they valued me. And I guess I'd never, well, yes, I have, yeah. My entire life, I have built families around me. I have my family, yes, but I've been in places, in situations where I need a support system, and I've always naturally done this. And of course I did this when I was a teenager because I had quite a bit of loss. And so I would build a family. And so the people I worked with became an instant family, supportive. And so I was given a couple of space heaters. And so I was in this living room with the children, night after night with the space heaters running during the day just to keep it warm. And when it finally came down to a point where it was unsafe to stay there, the team that was rallying behind me had begun fixing up and building, essentially, an apartment, which I'm sitting in right now. And so in August, before it got cold, it was decided that the front half of a house that was owned by friends of mine would be turned into an apartment where I could live with the children. And my stepdad and my mother and my boss and my coworkers and my friends and my bandmates all helped to create this space. And we worked endless hours to get it ready because we knew that fall and winter was on its way. And when we got into November and I was still at the house and it was cold and the dishwasher wasn't working and the oven stopped working and it was getting to a point where the space heaters were not going to be able to keep up, that we made that last ditch effort and finally got the apartment ready for me to move in. And so I did. I moved in with all 3 children, and we continued to work, and we continued to make the apartment. We had more work to do before it could be deemed complete. And so that's what we did. We lived here and worked at the same time. But it was really difficult for me to leave that house behind, even though I had to. It was extremely hard to leave that house behind. Things were not good between my partner and I. But I still held on to this belief that it was still going to change. Something was going to change. He was going to change. And so walking away from that house was symbolic in a way. Like, this will be it. We both walk away from this and it's really over. And I had a really hard time getting myself fully out of that place. And so I remember, I barely remember how it all happened. But obviously, at work, I was working and I was doing my best and, pulling myself together. Every day I made some small improvement. But this house, it was still looming over me. All my stuff was still there. And it was killing me to go back to the house and sift through all this stuff. I mean, the house was dead. It was a dead house. The heat wasn't working.